Okay, Kate,
Wonderful.
thank you so much for being here. I'm so
You're
excited to dive
welcome.
into this.
Of
And like I
course.
mentioned, I think this would be a really helpful way for people who are nervous about starting their recovery and
Yeah.
starting that journey with food and body to learn a little
Hmm.
bit more about someone who is also very nervous about starting, like we all are, and a
Always.
little bit skeptical. So just to give them some encouragement and hope for
Of
their journey.
course. Yeah.
Okay, so I will start with the question.
Yeah.
How would you
I'm ready.
describe your overall experience with working together and starting your relationship with food and body
I
journey?
remember when I reached out to you, I was at a really desperate point and I was really, I wanted to do the work, but I didn't know how it would, like, if whoever I was like, what, I'm going to start
Mhm.
over again. I
Yeah,
wanted to do the work. I was nervous that wouldn't find a good fit.
right.
Um, and so I'm going to read your question over here because I
Yeah,
tend to talk a lot.
yeah.
My overall experience with you was incredibly positive because of the warmth and the empathy that you showed me. We took it at my pace. I never felt pushed. I didn't feel like I had to have all the answers.
Hmm.
And I even think to this day, 5 years later, maybe I don't still have all the answers, but that's okay because I think relationships with food are incredibly complex.
Yeah.
Um, so I would say our overall experience was incredibly positive, and there are things that we talked about 5 years ago that I actually still ruminate, I think, ruminate through my brain from
Yeah.
time to time.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm so glad you feel that way. I think that's super
Thank you.
important for your journey. It is your journey. It's your autonomy. You have to feel like that it is so complex and there's
It's
so many pieces.
incredibly complex. I mean, when we met, I had been bulimic for already 14, 15 years at that point. So I was like in deep. I was entrenched, and that was
Mhm.
like my life.
Yeah.
And I was pregnant on top of it and
Yeah.
really wanting to start, changing my relationship with food because I saw down the line what that would look like for my kids.
Mhm.
Um, and, I think there was a part of me, and there always will be, that wants a sense of freedom. Always. I want to walk naturally through this life without feeling so obsessed with something that's very normal. It's just normal
Right.
to eat,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And it's such
Yeah.
a brave thing to do to like reach
Thank
out
you.
for support, let someone in,
Yeah.
or guidance. Because yeah, it is scary. You have this deep and complex relationship with food and body image and everything that makes that up. So
Hmm.
you have to feel safe and comfortable to take all the little steps. And so yeah,
Hmm.
I'm grateful that you let me in and gave me the opportunity to like walk
I was
alongside you.
grateful to you that it was for me that we were a match, a fit.
Mhm.
That
Yeah.
was incredible. Even though we were, you were in Colorado and I'm in, on the East Coast. That
Yeah.
was huge for me. I mean, it was like I felt so lucky.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
great for me.
Good. Same here. So thank you so
Thanks.
much for sharing that. I'm
Of
curious to
course.
hear a little bit about what, you said when you came to me, it was you were in deep, you were in,
Hmm.
struggling for 14 years. And I don't remember now if you worked with
Yeah.
some people before that or what you did in
No, you
recovery.
were my first entree like into any kind of eating disorder recovery work.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you did amazing to jump
Thank
right in
you.
into, for never seeing someone before
I'm
getting that
very black
support.
and white. I think a lot of us that have those, obsessive compulsive or like
Mm.
addictive tendencies, we're like all in or we're not.
Uh-huh, yeah, yeah,
And I was all in. I'm
yeah,
always all in when I commit to something.
yes, yes, you totally were, so I'm curious, with coming from such, like, just yeah, 14 years, it's a lot of time.
A long
From
time.
before to then working with it, like, to our journey together, how does that look like before and after, before and now?
It's been 5 years, which is a long time.
Mhm.
Um, are you asking me sort of what my eating looks like now, having
Kind of
worked together?
what was your prior to seeking support and starting to work
Hmm.
with me, what did that look like and how did that transform?
I think prior to seeking support, I was happy to just let myself spiral.
Yeah.
Right. I was happy to sort of indulge in all like the morbid like love for my bulimia, like just really just self-sabotage and be
Yeah.
destructive.
Yeah.
I think when we met, I saw an opportunity to start to love myself.
Mhm.
right? And take care of myself. I thought that I was taking care of myself in my own sick way,
Yeah.
by binging, right? I was meeting like an emotional need
Mhm,
and
mhm.
really like sort of placating my anxiety. That wasn't taking care of myself.
Yeah.
And I think when we met, where I saw a shift is that what I was doing wasn't taking my care of myself at all. I mean,
Right,
really, it
right.
was, I remember expressing to you how much time I wasted. I remember saying this like very vividly, being like, Jamie, I waste so much time.
Yeah.
And you would ask me, what else would you rather do if you weren't spending hours in your car binging?
Yeah.
And that was something that really struck me. It's like, what, how can I take care of myself and really meet my needs? It's not through food.
Yeah.
That's not doing anything.
Mhm.
It's really destructing,
Yeah.
self-destructing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's awesome. I think that it's really easy to continue to, be in these comfortable behaviors that are not comfortable at
Hmm.
all. I remember all our conversations of like it's so distress it brings so much distress.
So much
But it's like
stress, so much
comfortable.
planning, so much mental energy around like what does my schedule look like this week? When am I going to be able to do this? How is this going to make me feel later in the day?
Mhm.
Am I going to get to, that was like something I would do in my downtime, but like
Yeah.
it didn't feel like downtime. It just felt like something that I had
Yeah.
to like tick off the box.
Right.
It didn't feel like it was nourishing. I mean, it was just taking from me, taking
Yeah. Yeah.
all
And
the
yeah, absolutely. And then changing that behavior like is
time.
very, very uncomfortable, very, to
Yeah,
start to like I'm gonna trust my body and trust food and get uncomfortable and,
yeah,
have this food, but not use my behavior or
correct.
like just it's so uncomfortable because your mind is wired to feel safe in those
Yeah.
behaviors. Um,
Mhm,
but you
mhm.
made those choices to get uncomfortable and do
Oh,
things
yeah,
differently.
and I still do. I think that's something that's really important, especially because 'cause we're talking about this and you're recording it.
Yep.
That those fears, they don't go away, but I know that everything I put in my mouth is not gonna kill me.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna balloon and, one of my biggest fears, and we'll talk about body image,
Yeah.
was that I would suddenly present in a bigger body, and would I be comfortable with that? And I remember telling you no.
Mhm.
And having been pregnant and had 3 kids, I've seen my body change a lot, and even, postpartum, my body's very different. Um, and that's okay. Like, it's okay. I'm not, there's nothing wrong with with what I look like. There's really inherent, this is just a vessel
Yeah.
to like carry around my brain,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And my heart, and like my love and my emotion. Like, I'm just, um, I really am so much more than my physical presence.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
okay with that. I
Yeah,
really am.
absolutely. I mean, that's such a transformation for your relationship with your body and your relationship with
Hmm.
food. And so much of that, like that is all due to the work that you've done to get uncomfortable and to start rewiring those
Hmm.
thoughts and to then have different beliefs because sitting
Yeah.
with that discomfort then helps you to understand, oh, I'm safe when I have this food. These fears don't come
You're
true.
s
Oh,
you're
I'm
still okay. You're
safe and
not your
good.
thoughts and feelings, right?
Right. Right.
You are not your thoughts and feelings.
Mhm.
Like, really and truly, you're the core of your being is not any thought or feeling that you have. It's
Yeah.
so much deeper, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and you practice it over and over and over and over again,
Oh my gosh, all the
so
time. I
getting a little
still,
bit less
as I said,
uncomfortable. Yeah, yeah.
to this
Mhm.
day, I still
Mhm.
sometimes have to talk sort of coach myself through
Yep.
decisions I make around eating, and that's okay.
Mhm.
That's fine
Yeah,
because I still, I'm committed to doing my work
yeah,
as much as I can.
right, you're choosing
So I have
respect.
a sip of my tea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, you're choosing respect, you're choosing to take care of yourself, which
Yep.
again, you understand, "This is what taking care of myself is." Before, what I
Yeah.
was doing was not, it was maybe served you for a while to take care of yourself, but this is no longer what I
Right.
understand to be taking care of myself and nourishing
Right.
my life and the way that I want to.
Right.
So, that's awesome. It's so good to hear. I'm so proud of you. That's such
You.
hard work. I know I've been, being through it, helping people through it. It's really hard. And that's great that you invested in yourself in that way.
Thank you.
So thank you for sharing that. So what tools did and strategies and like when you think about our work together, I know it's been a bit, but
It's been a hot minute.
yeah, it's been a hot minute. What do you think that you like, what are the things that you feel like you took away the most? Do you remember
Mhm.
anything that was like, I still
Mm,
apply this thing?
yes, there's one thing 5 years later that will be seared in my brain, and it might sound super corny to you, but I remember saying to you, "Look, Jamie, like, here's the deal, like, I'm a very scheduled, regimented person, like, right? I thrive on certainty,
Yep.
and I get very, like, out off kilter if I don't have a routine." And I said to you, like, if I eat breakfast and then it's like noon, and let's say like, or like maybe I eat breakfast and then it's noon and I'm not hungry, like what do I do? Or
Yeah.
like maybe one day I don't want breakfast but then it's like 10:30, do I eat lunch? Like what happens? And I remember you saying so vividly, you said, "Kate, eat when you're hungry."
Yes. Yes. I remember this.
And you would think that, like, you had just unlocked the secret to the world to me, because that's something that to this day, I give myself permission to eat when I'm hungry. I don't care what the clock says. Um, and maybe like it's 10:30 in the morning and I don't want a traditional, like if there's a weird time of day,
Mhm.
maybe I'll have like, not a breakfast food. But I remember just having
Yep.
such stringent rules around
Uh-huh.
timing and what foods I would pick during that time of day, because it was lunchtime or dinner time or whatever. And I remember saying this to my husband, being like, "Jamie says I should just eat whenever I'm hungry." Because we also do family dinners
Yeah.
from 5:30 to
Mhm.
this day, every day. And there are some times where it's 4:30, and even though I'm preparing a meal for all of us, I gotta eat.
Yeah.
So I eat.
Mhm.
And then I sit down at the table at an hour later, and if I want to have more, I'll have more. If I'm not ready, it's there for like when I want to have some.
Mhm.
That was huge for me.
Yeah.
Like that is the reason why I jumped on this call, was to tell you that thank you for giving me permission to eat at whatever time of day it is and
Absolutely.
whatever food it is that I want. Because
Yes.
that literally, I don't think I ever thought to give myself permission to do that, and I needed to hear it from someone else.
Yes, absolutely. And you gave yourself that permission, right? Like it's so, and that's such hard permission to give ourselves because the
Right?
rules you have, so your rules, I remember having this exact conversation way more
Yep.
than once because it takes way more than one conversation, but
Uh-huh.
having these like I feel safe if I eat at this time and this time
This
because
time.
I know how my body responds. I know how my mind responds. I like feel
Uh-huh.
safe in that container.
Uh-huh.
And so starting to break those rules and being like,
Uh-huh.
well, I could eat whenever and I could eat this quote unquote, this isn't breakfast.
Breakfast, right? Like
Right.
I had like a ground turkey quesadilla at like 11 o'clock. That's kind of lunchy. Whatever, 10:30, like a week ago,
Oh
with
yeah.
like beans and cheese.
Hmm.
I was like, that's what I wanted.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it was delicious, by the
Yeah.
way.
I don't think I ever have breakfast. I think I always have lunch for breakfast. But yeah, it's these
Exactly.
weird societal rules that and rules that we build around like, kind of this way of coping. And you broke
Mm-hmm.
those rules. Maybe I offered a what would happen if we maybe ate when we were hungry. But that's a very hard thing to do. Even like I'm sure listeners will be like, how do I know if I'm hungry? What if, how
It's not perfect, right? So
right.
this is not like an exact science, which is
Uh-huh.
still something that I, am working on, which is really to figure out, like, am I hungry? That's my hunger cues, because my eating disorder has run for many, many years. It's still something that I'm training my brain
Yeah.
to do.
Right. Right. And that's
But
the thing we know when you're talking about you when you're hungry. If you also, so there's really slight hunger cues. And also,
right.
if you ate when you're not hungry, w-
Yeah.
okay, can we build trust around eating if you're not hungry? Because,
Yeah, I've had to do that too. I have 3 kids. I have to take my son to speech pathology today at 5:30. That's when we typically eat dinner. We're gonna be there for about an hour and a half,
mhm,
so I'm not gonna be able to eat dinner. So guess what? I gotta have a snack before I go.
yeah,
Like, I got a
absolutely.
plan. I got a contingency plan.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And see, oh, my body's okay. Actually, it's better
it's
than
gonna
today,
be
and I'm
okay.
not overly hungry and feeling out of control. But there's
Don't
so
wanna be
much that
hangry.
goes into that, right, Kate?
Yeah.
Like when you think about it, we had to do and talk about, body image work around that because, well, what comes up behind if I eat when I'm not hungry? What does that mean?
Mhm.
What does that happens to my body? What happen? There's just
Mhm.
so much deep work that goes into, yeah, it's simple to just eat when you're hungry,
Yeah.
consistently allow all foods, but there's a ton of fear and coping and body image that comes up
Yep.
around that makes it really difficult for, I'm just thinking of listeners listening, be like, okay, I'll just eat when I'm hungry. I'm sure it's going to be a huge struggle.
I
um,
mean, don't
Apply.
I've done that so many times, and don't get me wrong, like 9 times out of 10, I'm eating when I'm physically hungry. And so I think where I find a little bit of comfort is even though I'm like, "Oh, I'm not, like, really feeling it,"
Mhm.
9 times out of 10, I'm eating the way I would like to or would
Yeah,
choose to,
yeah,
right? It's
absolutely.
in that little 10% where I might have to deviate from my plan. It's
Yeah.
not consistent, and that's what I think brings me a little bit of, like, ease when my eating disorder thoughts are like,
Yeah.
oh, no,"
Mhm.
right? It's
Yeah.
like, "Kate, 90% of the time, you get to do exactly what you want,
Yeah.
really.
Absolutely. And that's
You get
awesome.
to make those choices."
Yeah, that's
And
awesome.
even though eating when I'm not hungry is still a choice. I mean, I wouldn't wanna suffer being hangry.
Mhm.
That, with 3 kids, is not a good look.
Yes. Yes,
It's
absolutely.
not a good look at
Absolutely,
all.
and it sounds like, that's taking really good care of yourself, you're grounded,
Mhm.
you're really making decisions from a grounded place of, like, "How can I respect myself and take care of myself?" And there might be some
Yeah,
things that pop up, some, anxieties around it, but, every time you practice that, you get stronger and stronger and in
it
that.
is a muscle. It's
Mhm.
a muscle that it's like anything. It's like training anything else, you
Yeah,
know? We
absolutely.
can we can rewire our brains. It takes a lot of practice,
Mhm.
but it's possible. And
Yeah.
I full disclosure, I'm not a perfect human being at
Mhm.
all, but, like, I show up every day for myself,
Yeah, and that's amazing.
right?
That's what it takes, showing up every day for
I
yourself.
show up.
Every day in those moments, like, you
Mhm.
really can't eh, it's not good to go all the way in the future, you can create some goals, but it is what
Right,
creates is all those choices that you're making, which is
right.
so awesome, and you've come so far, and you've done such a good job,
Thank you.
that's so awesome, I'm really happy for you. We touched a little bit on body image. I'm curious about,
Yeah,
before and where you are now with body image,
yeah,
how that's maybe transformed, maybe paints a little bit of a picture for,
yeah.
because I think it would help people who maybe are like, "Oh gosh, I have a horrible relationship with body image. This will never change."
Mm,
And that's how people think this is how it's gonna be like forever. So when they
yeah.
hear, "Well, I was there too, but now I'm here,"
Mhm.
um, it creates a lot of hope. So I'm curious about
I
that.
think body image is as a woman, I can speak as a woman,
Mhm.
and as a woman, as an elder millennial woman who was really heavily exposed to diet culture a lot. Um, it's something that I think I will always struggle with.
Yeah.
Um, when we met, I was adamant that, like, I was gonna do the work, but I refused to see my body, like, in any different shape or size than it was at that time, and I was pregnant at that time, which is really ironic to me. Um, but I remember telling you how much pride I took in, like, the exercise that I did, which I still do, I still love to exercise, but I wasn't willing to even entertain the idea that if I let go of some of my food rules and my body change, that I would be okay.
Yeah.
What I've come to find out in 5 years is that I've been in a bigger body,
Mhm.
not a drastically bigger one, and
Mhm.
I've actually even been in a smaller body at times
Mhm.
in the last 5 years, if anyone can believe it,
Mhm.
but I'm okay no matter what, no
Right.
matter how I show up, right?
Mhm.
Um, I found that I think a lot of my thoughts around body have changed because I'm a mom,
Mhm.
right? I have a daughter specifically, not that this should be gendered in any way,
Yeah.
but I think to myself, these children love me no matter how I
Mhm.
like show up. Like, right? I
Yep.
mean, we could talk about my physical, we could talk about weight and height and shape, but
Mhm.
even you could just talk about the fact that I have, my hair is gross and I'm in a ratty t-shirt.
Yeah.
I'm not looking my best, but that doesn't inherently change my worth or my
Right.
value,
Mhm.
no matter
Mhm.
how I sort of present.
Yep, yep.
Um, And I think what happens when you do work around eating disorders and body image, when there's time, like we're talking about, you and I met 5 years ago.
Mhm.
When I look back retrospectively and think to times in the last 5 years where my body's been a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller, I've been okay no matter what.
Yeah, yeah,
So maybe I don't feel comfortable in any given moment. That's why I said, like, full disclosure, I'm not perfect. Maybe I don't feel
yeah,
the best about myself on any given day,
mhm,
but I'm okay.
yeah.
Like, I'm okay.
That
And I think that's huge.
that
That's
is
huge.
so huge. I'm sure
Like,
that
I'm okay. I don't have to love the way that I look every single day, but
yep,
I'm okay.
yeah. That's amazing. I think people hearing that are it's gonna give it gives them so much hope because
Mhm.
there's so many people wishing, "I just wanna be okay." And to hear, "I wasn't okay, it was such a struggle, always on my mind," to
Always, always on my mind.
yeah,
Oh my gosh.
right, right, to now I'm okay.
I'm
That
okay.
is such a great place. That is
Again, don't love myself every day, but
right.
I'm okay.
Exactly.
I'm
And
fine.
that's a huge thing. You're accepting the fluidity. You're accepting
Mhm.
you're not focusing on your body like that. You're like, "Well, I'm gonna feel
No.
different ways about it, and that's okay."
Yeah.
There's acceptance, there's fluidity, there's,
Yeah.
holding space for that,
Yep.
there's compassion in that. I hear the compassion
Yes.
that you have for your body in that, which
Yep.
just is so big to get to that place.
Yeah.
I mean, that is not something small, and even when you're like, "Well, maybe I have, like, more work I wanna do, or maybe I wanna feel this," or what
Always. I think
right?
I will always have work to do,
Right, right, and
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 that's okay.
and that's
It's
okay, right?
fine.
You're gonna always have a body, you're always gonna have a body that's changing, we live in the
Yeah.
society we live in, you have a
Yeah.
large history, and when you started your work, I'm sure you were like, "If I get to this place, that would be amazing if I knew that was possible," and now you're there
Mhm.
feeling that way,
Mhm.
that and practicing that.
I think it's also important for what it's worth is to tell people that when you start to make changes around food, like for what it's worth for those people that have really disordered eating, like like I guess you could say that like I did or I still like, right?
Yeah, struggle, yeah.
Um that you would have to fundamentally like 180 everything about your diet and your lifestyle, your diet,
Mhm.
to really, I think, enter a space where you would be so uncomfortable with your body that you would reject it outright.
Right.
I mean, really, I mean, for me, what was important was just eating the food,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
It was just eating the food. I wasn't sitting there. I don't know what I'm trying to exactly say. It would really like my whole lifestyle would have had to been overhauled to a point where
I
my
think I
body
get
caved
what you're
to such a degree where I'd feel so uncomfortable that I was like, you know what, I don't want to do this work
right,
anymore.
exactly. You really
Does that
yes, I
make
think
sense?
it does make sense. I think you're speaking to people have a huge fear that things are gonna drastically change, they're gonna feel so uncomfortable, things are gonna be so
Yes.
different because they really play out all these, like, really these fears of, like, "I don't know, I don't feel like myself," um,
Right. I mean,
and
you would have to just like overhaul your whole life,
right,
right?
right, and that's just
Well,
out of your window of tolerance. People can't do it that way.
right.
You have to take baby steps to be like,
Baby
"I'm safe
steps.
here, I'm safe here, I'm comfortable here, I can
Yep.
tolerate this," to
Yep.
be able to get there, but that is such a fear. That's why some people jump right into the pool, and some people dip their toes
Right.
in. It's different for everyone. It
Totally.
depends on, where you're at and everyone's journey. Yeah.
Totally.
So that makes all the sense. I just got the 10-minute reminder that we have 10 minutes. I'm
Okay.
curious, so, anything else that you would like people to know to give them some hope or to share anything?
You know, don't make me emotional, please.
I don't want to.
Any any work that you do, when you enter this space and you choose yourself, you are giving yourself a huge gift. It doesn't feel like it in the moment. It really doesn't. It doesn't feel like the when you're gonna entertain the idea of maybe changing everything that you know, that like you're gonna be safe, or that things could get better. They can. They really can. Um, and I remember you saying to me, Kate, what's like the worst thing that's gonna happen if you give up your behaviors, your bulimic behaviors, your binging and your purging? Um, you know, what's if you give it up, you can always, I mean, really, you said you can always go back to it.
Mhm.
And you weren't wrong.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
and I felt a lot of freedom to say, you know what, Kate, if you hate this so bad and you really, this isn't for you,
Yeah.
Jamie's not wrong. It's not, there's nothing stopping you from going back to those behaviors, but why not just try this?
Yeah.
Try it.
Mhm.
Try it. What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
hate it and you, not that I would, giving people permission explicitly
Yeah.
to, I do feel like a lot of my behaviors were self-harming,
Mhm.
really and truly.
Mhm.
But it's okay to try. It's okay
Yeah.
to try something different. I
Yeah.
remember you saying that, and that was incredibly, that gave me like the space to even entertain to do the work, right? Because
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know, right?
you gotta have your freedom and autonomy in that, and I say that
Mhm.
to this day with everyone because I think you need even for myself exploring scary things in life in general,
Mhm.
you have to you owe it to yourself to experiment, but, and you also have your very real protective parts and behaviors that, you might feel the need to go back to, and you don't want anyone taking that away from you. No one's you.
Right.
You can say that.
Right.
So to know, like, why not? You just haven't explored this other thing, and you
Try
might,
it.
and most
Right.
likely will find that, oh, this actually feels way better and feels way more
Mhm.
protective and feels way more
Mhm.
respectful than maybe this other thing, but it's still there for you. You can
But
s
you have to give it time. I think
Mhm.
the
Yes.
one takeaway I would say is that even 5 years out, there are things that I would love to tweak and,
Mhm.
make perfect if I could.
Right. Right.
That might be a lifelong battle for me, or struggle, or maybe that's not the right words I want.
Yeah.
Choice, a life I'll be making these choices
Yeah.
for a long time.
Mhm.
But give it time,
Yeah.
right? Like, mess up, start all over again, try something different. Like, if you're willing to do the work, there's no one linear way to do it.
Yeah.
Keep at it.
Yeah.
Keep working at it. It doesn't have, you don't have to choose one route to recovery.
Yeah.
Um and for me, recovery from many things has not been linear
Yeah.
at all, like at
Mhm.
all. And that's okay too.
Yeah.
Because if I only thought that the only way I was going to recover was to just go up, 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 up,
Mhm.
I might as well have just stayed in my disordered eating forever, right?
Yeah.
And just been like,
Absolutely.
you know what, the first time, right? Like, that
And
would
that's so
just,
disheartening and discouraging because then you think, "Oh, well, I must be failing because this is not going up, 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 or it's not linear, or
it's
quote unquote used to behave like I failed
right.
today or at this
It
moment."
really is not a linear path, and I think that's normal. I think that's healthy because you
Yes.
learn so much. You really do.
Yeah.
Like, so
There's so
much
much to
from
learn.
like relapsing, coming back and trying it differently and tweaking it and like evaluating. I mean, right. I think it's so important to fail. I think
Yes.
it's so
It's
important.
part of it. You have to fail. I, like, invite people to fail. They learn
You have
so
to. You're
much.
not learning. You
No.
can give them all the tools, but until they sort of have that moment, that like come to Jesus moment where they're struggling again, and maybe they like, use their behaviors, and they're like, and then but then you reevaluate, right? Tweak it. Keep
Yeah.
coming back.
And if
Just
we're
keep
about
coming back.
perfection, we're taking a lot of learning away from people, like,
Yeah.
about, that's the next step that needs to happen, that failure needs to
Mhm.
happen for the next thing to happen. So, I
Absolutely.
love all of everything that you said. I think is gonna be so helpful for people, and I think that people struggle with, which is number 1, a quick fix. I need a quick fix.
Mhm.
The need for it just to feel like it's linear, and then the part that you started with which is investing in yourself. People I think have a very hard time choosing to, well, first of all, it's uncomfortable, but also choosing
Oh,
to
it's
invest
super
in
uncomfortable.
themselves
It's
and
the
give back.
most uncomfortable thing I've ever done.
Yes, yes,
Just
absolutely.
easily,
Yes,
easily the most uncomfortable thing I've ever done.
totally.
Even just getting on this, our first conversation, I was like, "What am I doing?
Yes,
Why am I doing this? Am I
yes.
serious right now?"
Mhm.
I
It's so great. You kinda you have to
I
follow
mean,
your
right?
discomfort. If something's making you uncomfortable, it's something to get really curious about because that's where, like, a lot of growth happens. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm just so glad that you invested in yourself, and I think that's a great message for folks out there is, it's worth investing in yourself. You're
It's
worth
worth
investing in
trying,
yourself.
right?
Yeah.
Try it, just try it,
Mhm.
really.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Well, there's nothing to lose, really. I mean, if you hate it, then you hate it. I
Yeah,
mean, that, like, that's not, it's maybe not the best way to leave it, but
no, but it's true, like, experiment. You owe it to
try.
yourself to experiment.
I
If
mean,
something's
if you've
not
made it
working
this
or feel
far,
good.
right?
Mhm.
If you've made it this far to where you're potentially meeting with Jamie, you're in a good space to
Yeah,
like try something
yeah,
out that's
yeah.
new, right? If you're
I
here, I
totally
like, oh,
agree.
let's like walk through this door and see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. If there's a part of you that feels strongly like what I'm doing isn't working, what I'm doing
Hmm.
doesn't feel good, and
Hmm.
there's hope that
Especially if it doesn't feel good. Especially that's when I came to you because it doesn't. It was at that point where it wasn't feeling good anymore.
Yes, absolutely. And you owe it to yourself to listen to that part. Sometimes your safety parts are like, it's okay if it doesn't feel good. Like this is what feels safe, this is what feels comfortable, this is what we know.
Yep.
Listening to that self part that's like, this doesn't feel compassionate. I am
No.
curious about something different. I want to be courageous and
Yes.
try that out. That is
Go with the curiosity and see where it leads you. You
yeah.
might be surprised.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Kate. This is so helpful. I
Oh
know
my
this will
gosh.
help people to hear this, and I'm so proud of you. It's so cool to see
Thank
again
you.
how all
Thank
the
you.
hard work obviously has paid off tremendously. I'm very proud of you. I'm very excited for people to hear it, and I just really appreciate your time
Thank you,
with all of this.
Jamie. You're the
Yeah,
best.
yeah, it was really good reconnecting as well.
So good to talk to you.
Yes.